in the like the goon chat and shit.
Get it.
Just gonna quickly try to share.
I'm doing it.
Okay, just just gonna quickly put it. There we go. There are people. All right.
I'm just gonna.
Oh, is it pressing a button? Okay.
No, it's not. It's not secure. Okay.
Okay. I'll give it a second for Justin.
Yeah. Whenever you're ready. I'll just get up there right now and start jabbering. Great, thank you. Okay. Hi. Welcome everybody to Theosophy Hall. If you're lucky enough to be here, special invite. We really wanted to keep this contained, so we stay good with the powers that be for now. But we're unveiling this theater kind of to the public, for the occult community and the arts community this summer. So it's gonna be a lot happening, and I'm really happy you guys came. Thanks. Came far and wide. I've met a few guys, and I know you know a little bit about Theosophy so far. I'll just give you kind of the basics. The basics is there's kind of something called the three objects, and the first one is universal brotherhood, which sounds silly, but in 1888, before World War I, it was kind of a novel idea. Second is the study of comparative religions, wisdom traditions, things like that, especially history, and alternative histories as well. And then the third is the investigation of metaphysical and occult powers latent in man, be it psychic, be it other things. A lot of us have experienced some of that stuff in our lives or even seen bits of it. And so this series that we hope to keep going, it probably will become weekly, is going to be just that, investigating, being real theosophists and looking into new phenomenon, old phenomenon. We're in Los Angeles, we're in a place where we can bring in a lot of interesting people and really see if some of the stuff lines up, coincides, synthesizes, things like that. So to get started, I don't know that much about I Ching, as Blavatsky and some Chinese people call it. I know a little bit about the throwing the sticks and the divination part of it, but the book of images, it's a whole thing. And with that, the only thing that I'll say is the person that started Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, one thing she had to say about I Ching is, or the Book of Changes, I'm sorry, not Book of Images. The Book of Changes is what that means, or Book of Change. And she didn't have a lot to say about I Ching because it was still pretty unpenetrable back then. But the one thing that she did say was that you didn't really have to worry about it as a tool for divination as far as the dangers involved in some other tools, because she said the spirits, elementals or elementaries, the forces and the powers and psychic things going around the I Ching could be trusted, and that hadn't really had any kind of bad evidence in the history of 2,000 years. And so she didn't say that about spirits and even divination most of the time. So that's a really big compliment. And so I'm really glad Chris is here, Chris Gabriel. He's definitely a prodigy in the fields that he has chosen or that have chosen him. So we're super glad to have him and look forward to having more of these and getting really interesting and doing some real investigation. So without further ado, Chris.
Hello, everybody. I think many of you in person are here because at some point I have proven to you that divination is possible, or at least that divination offers a fascinating look at the world, and I want to explain a bit what divination operates on, and especially how it operates in the I Ching, which I will show is essentially identical to tarot. So we start with what is basically a picture of reality, a picture of the world. So properly, we just have like nothing. You start with nothing. Divine nothing, but nothing. Then we kind of mark out that there is nothing. From nothing to there is nothing. Now, a magical formula that has been used to describe this is 0 equals 2. So nothing becomes 2 things. From nothing to 2 things. The nothingness of reality divides itself out of loneliness, out of horniness, out of desperation and need to exist. So, from nothing to 2 things. These 2 things become manifest. This is good and evil, light and dark, positive and negative. And of course, this is what we know as, in our Western view of China, as yin-yang. And so, obviously, there's something of the other in the other. So from there, it divides again. You get 4. This is the process that is called emanation. So this division begins and just starts continually dividing itself until we get down to us. But basically what we're offering here is that there is a streamlined view of the base elements that make up the world. So we start out by symbolizing, this is a little confusing, the symbol for positive, the symbol for yang looks like R minus. The symbol for negative is a broken line. So from there, we have this. So this is the beginning of our path down into the world, into reality. What do y'all think? Are you with me? Okay. From here, now, these base elemental pieces start to form greater images. So in the I Ching, there are things called trigrams. These trigrams indicate, so they take these 3 parts and they become symbolized. So we're just going to start with the middle pillar because this is the most directly divine. So we get fire, water. This is another confusing part, but I'm going to do my best to explain it. Heaven and earth. This middle pillar are the primary elements of the I Ching. In Kabbalah proper, this would be called Kether, or Ein Sof, above the nothingness. This is called Dath. This is the image of the top 3. These parts are unable to be seen, they are invisible, they are too great for human understanding, and so they are symbolized by this cipher. So there. There are only 8 trigrams and 10 parts of the Tree of Life. Then, I'm going to just add in little symbols to show you what is what. Fire is the sun, water is the moon, and earth is Earth or Saturn. you will also notice, this is a minor point, we'll talk about it later, but if you know astrology, you know that the sun opposes Saturn and the moon opposes Saturn. The oppositions are occurring in a linear path. And then we go down. So we're forming this tree. One of the things that Blavatsky said, and that was agreed upon by Crowley, is that the I Ching is a direct and perfect mirror to the Kabbalah. This is true. The Kabbalah is based around these 10 principles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These are the 10 parts of the world. The 7 planets appear here, the base elements appear here, and from this we get 10 cards in tarot. Then there are paths, you'll see in your work in the sheet. There are paths that connect these. So what we're getting here is a set of base elements that make up reality. It is their connections that form the hexagrams of the I Ching and the tarot cards, the major cards in a tarot deck. So, for example, let's go from Mercury to Earth. This path is the path of Shin, which is the path of fire. This is the tarot card, the Aeon, or the Last Judgment. And the image, I think the most important image that we can get from it in I Ching is hexagram 20. So 20 is wood. This element is called wood over earth. And the idea is that it looks like a watchtower. It's called the watchtower. So you can see there's a little tower there. So from a tower, you look down on the earth. The Chinese character that represents this is literally a bird's eye. It is the way that a bird sees, it is a bird's eye point of view. The Aeon shows us the image of an angel looking down on the world. So already we're starting to get the similarity of Kabbalistic imagery with the imagery of the I Ching. These cosmic elements and their interaction is what gives us an image of the world. When we can break down the world into these simple parts, you can then get ideas about what's happening. In the book of Ecclesiastes, you are given a set of, I think, 38 or so times. There is a time to kill, a time to be born, a time to die, and so on. The I Ching as a book of change is directly a continuation of that Solomonic wisdom. So the interplay of elements, the interplay of planets, this is really the key. These are like the base building blocks that we're getting. These are like the months or, the years. These are the base divisions of time. And yes, that I would say is pretty much the short of what is going on here. It's a fall. The progress from God to earth is the fall of matter, the fall of spirit into matter. We witness this degradation. But in magic, we're in this fallen world. We're in this spiritless pit. But through proper study, through ritual, through ceremony, through meditation, we can start to ascend back up to the top. So, this is actually a place where the I Ching develops a more advanced character than tarot. Tarot indicates only the path itself. The I Ching, as you can see there, offers the path up and the path down. That is one of the kind of revolutionary elements of the I Ching. What makes the I Ching so easy is that these are pictures. These are very, very simple pictures. How do you combine, say, fire and water? Fire above water, so sun over moon, this is natural. This is the way of nature. This is simply how it is. Heat rises, cold descends. But when we flip it, and you put water over fire, then you're getting what is essentially an alchemical image. You know, the fire that is not doused, that is not put out by water, but that boils water, that transforms water. That is indicated solely by the tarot card art, or temperance, which is what you'd call the path of Samak. This is the path of magic to Crowley. The ability to move from unconscious to high consciousness. This is one of the big problems of magic. And in a lot of ways, we are given a direct indication of it in the I Ching. I'd like questions, if anybody has questions. I feel like it's a bit difficult. This topic is something that's so good to do at home. It's so good to experience casting coins and feeling and seeing this. Yes?
What's the relationship between what you're drawing and the diagram that you gave us on the printouts? Is there one, or?
Yes, this is the same.
Pattern match?
I can put circles around them. Yeah, these are the various spheres. These are the various spheres and their interplay.
On the diagram, the spheres seem to have two lots of the positive and negative symbols. What is that?
Wonderful. So the paths that directly connect are easy to correspond. But so each element, each part needs two, because there are 32 elements in Kabbalah. There are 64 hexagrams. So it is the doubling of the Kabbalistic parts that make up the I Ching. So that confused me a lot when I was first doing this work. I should also clarify, the correspondences that you're looking at are mine. Aleister Crowley did this. The first diagram you're looking at is from the same book that includes a trigram correspondence table. I took that and I just connected them. But this included some pretty large problems to overcome, such as so there are double hexagrams. So you have water, water, fire, fire, wood, wood, mountain, mountain. These are easy. But how do you correspond? How do you add more? And that is where I thought back to one of the great Kabbalistic wisdoms, which is that there is Malkuth in Kether, and there's Kether in Malkuth. As above, so below. There's a direct mirror that is occurring. And so I included the opposition, so the opposite element. So this has, I believe, heaven over earth, which is 12. And this has earth over heaven. So the oppositions then occur. This is one of the funny parts. The opposites are zigzagged. They cross the tree. Venus opposes Mars, Mercury opposes Jupiter. But along the middle pillar, the oppositions are entirely internal. Saturn opposes the moon, Saturn opposes the sun. So those patterns are followed in my I Ching correspondences.
And when you say it's something that's sort of fun to do at home, how does one practice this with coins or what have you?
So we would take 3 coins traditionally, and you throw them 6 times. You are creating, you build from the bottom up. Does anybody have coins? We can cast one. Apologies, I'm sure as the people.
Will any coin do?
1 coin will be fine. With 1 coin, we can get a lot done.
There's a stick somewhere around in this building.
I don't know how to do the sticks. The sticks also take like a half an hour.
Yeah.
But here's where we'll thank you. All right, so in euros, are heads the numbers? How should we count them?
Oops, sorry. I have.
No, we can just decide.
No.
I think the number is the tail.
Yeah, I think
The numbers, there's tails? Okay. So, does anybody have a question they would like to ask?
What sort of question should this be?
This can be any kind of question. Anybody in TB land?
Thinking too hard.
I want to know who's going to win the New York City mayoral race. Cuomo or the other guy, the socialist.
Who else is Adams? Who else is running?
Zora.
The only question I have is about your Wawa order.
What?
Zora. No, Zora.
The only question from the audience is what your Wawa order is.
My Wawa order. All right, we can do. I don't know. The mayoral race is a bit difficult. We could pull it on one of the people though.
Let's do something on Cuomo.
On Cuomo?
Yeah, Cuomo.
All right. So, just to explain a little, there's a tiny ritual that you do, which states what the 4 elements of the I Ching are, which is heaven. Heaven is the origin of our pure and bountiful harvest. This is what you say. Heaven is the origin of our pure and bountiful harvest. Tell me about Mayor Cuomo. All right. We got. So we start with a broken line. We also build from the bottom up. We build 2 trigrams as we throw these.
Chris, can I ask, how are you getting a dashed line versus a straight line?
Yes. So, we look at if you get tails, if you get all tails, it's broken.
Okay.
Tails are broken, heads are solid, basically. But it's complicated. If you get 2 broken and 1 solid, the single one leads. So if you get 2 broken, 1 solid, it's a solid line.
Okay.
We can start making bets once we get the answer. Okay, so we have our answer. And this is a good one. This is a good one that we got. This offers a funny funny story. So this is mountain over mountain, which I like to just call Twin Peaks. It's the picture of Twin Peaks. So this is within the sphere of Netzach. It's of the nature of Venus. And so what does that tell us? This is about sitting pretty. I will read from the book, though I do know it already. It's about meditation. It's about stillness. So what do we know in reference to Cuomo? No. Cuomo, this is not moving. This is not active. This is an inactive place. I will just give a few of the lines. Stop the feet, and there is no problem. It is beneficial to be ever steadfast and true. If stopping the calves does not save them from following, the heart is unhappy. Stopping at the boundary breaks continuity. Danger influences the heart. Because you were, stop the body and there is no fault. Still the jaws, be orderly in speech and regret disappears. Careful stopping is auspicious. So this is going from the bottom up, it's going from the feet to the head, it's all about stopping, it's about not moving. In reference to Cuomo, I would say that is saying, number one, he shouldn't run, or at least he's going to be stuck. He doesn't have legs, he doesn't have staying power. But if we look at its opposite, thunder over thunder. Which is 51. This is like, that would be a yes. We'll just compare how different they are, because this gives us a really good way of understanding opposition in this text. So 51, thunder. When thunder comes, there is fearful alarm. It is auspicious if there is the sound of mirthful talk afterward. Thunder coming is dangerous, remembering the loss of a treasure. You climb up 9 hills, but should not pursue, for you will get it in 7 days. When thunder is faint, stir into action and there will be no fault. Thunder falls in the mud. Thunder coming and going is dangerous. Remember there is no loss, and there is something to do. Thunder trailing off, the gaze unsteady, an expedition bodes ill. When thunder does not affect the individual, but does affect the neighborhood, there is no blame. If a partnership is formed, there is talk. This is far more of a yes. You know, when they say something big happens in politics, they say thunder strikes. Thunder has struck. This is the opposite. This is Mars. This is the masculine. This is the double masculine and the double feminine. So you can start to see, and then in tarot, this would be tarot cards that are 5s. This would be tarot cards that are 7s. So that is how you start to grasp kind of what these elements do. I think we should just continue kind of with questions. With, you know, which elements are you interested in? What would you like to know about these building blocks of reality? This is also astrological. This has to do with you.
I have a question.
Yes.
This might be too much, but I've always wondered what the, I mean, I'm sure I just look it up, but what the I Ching, what the relevance of the I Ching on the South Korean flag is.
So, okay. So these trigrams that I've drawn, you will also find them on Bagua mirrors. It's like, this is the very essence of what feng shui is. The same way that you have the cross. This is just an 8-pointed cross. The cross is the 4 elements. These are the 8 elements. This is like a perfect circle. It's a symbol of, you know, unity, of fullness, of being put together. The same way that we would draw a circle. The Bagua, because they're called Gua. These are called Gua. The Gua signify totality.
Are there any restrictions, comic restrictions or otherwise, on what one should use this for, what it's appropriate to do with it?
So that is a great question, and I think part of the reason that Blavatsky and Crowley both thought this was one of the most trustworthy divination methods is that this In tarot, when you start to go crazy, if you're pulling too many cards for yourself, it'll just start giving you doom. In here, it will literally, there are hexagrams that say, stop asking. It will tell you to stop. So if you're doing it wrong, it will tell you, which sounds crazy, but if you try it, that is what happens. The one that I think of that is most associated with that is 4. The innocent seek you. Though you do not seek the innocent yourself, the innocent seek you. The first augury informs, the second and third muddle. Muddling is not informative. It is advantageous to be correct. It's saying, the position of the reader, the position of the diviner, is one that is bothered by fools. So when you get something like that, you might take the step back and say, well, I'm being a fool, I'm asking too many times. And it says, ask once and be done. Don't keep asking the same question. So already built into the text are these fail-safes. Another thing that I think makes it really readily useful is the symbolic character is very direct. In the tarot, there is room to obfuscate, there is room to confuse because the images are so occulted. It gives room for intuition, but it also makes room for madness. These are rather wonderfully sparse. Something that you find, or something that I'd found in my studies of Ezra Pound, my studies of the ideogrammic method, is that, the poem is just a picture. This is the great example. You can just see a watchtower. It might be a bit difficult to see the mountain, but I'll try to illustrate it. So imagine this is the skyline. This is darkness beneath. These broken lines are dark. The solid line is light. Something that you notice when you drive through mountains is that there's a silver lining on the mountaintop. That is what that is. That is silver lining over a dark mountain. It's the way to depict it, the way to imagine it. The same way with thunder. It's darkness in the sky with a light striking at the bottom. These are giving us pretty good images. Earth, you can just imagine it's dark. It's also earth that is being tilled, lines being put through it. Water, I always like to imagine a fish or a log floating, something floating. Fire, this is like the log burning, the black char and black coal. The lake is, a surface of water, but there's depths beneath it. And yeah, these are some of the base images. And it's all about putting them together. A lot of this is what is happening in tarot. You just don't see it put together as kind of systematically and technologically as here.
I might have missed this when I was wandering around, but so corresponds with tarot, why? Like, where do they both come from so that they both correspond? You can't just be chance,
Excellent point. I just talked about this in an article this week, specifically about this path of Samak and how the symbolic similarities are too great. It is of my opinion that the Chinese mystics, because keep in mind this is considered to be the oldest text in human history by the Chinese. The Kabbalah also undoubtedly predates Judaism. The Kabbalah has its roots in ancient Egypt. And something that Chinese archaeologists have been discovering is that their oldest bronzes, the oldest bronze work that they're digging up is Egyptian metal. Of course, I don't think that this is ancient Egyptian. Truly, this is far more likely to be some kind of pre-civilization, what one would call an Atlantis or a Lemuria. This is a pre-civilizational kind of boot startup system for developing cosmologies. For developing an understanding of the universe, these base symbols are absolutely necessary. This, of course, is the origin of binary. This is the origin of binary code. Liebens, Gottlieb Liebens, is given a very, very, very early French translation of the I Ching by a Jesuit missionary, Joachim Bouvet, who had been sent to China, and he was of the opinion that Enoch, the biblical Enoch, wrote this, and others say, oh, this is Hermes Trismegistus. You know, it's a received text. The Chinese say that it was Fuji, who is a dragon. A dragon wrote this. So it is undoubtedly like a super ancient text. And the fact that it's shared by, also we can keep in mind, these are two cultures that utilize what is essentially hieroglyphic language. The language similarity I find really fascinating. Another thing that you find is that the emperors or pharaohs depict themselves as children. This is a commonality in Chinese imperial art and Egyptian dynasty art. I guess they're both dynasties. But the depiction of the leader as a child and the use of what is essentially a Kabbalistic system, which to me indicates fairly clearly that there is a shared ancestor.
Would this, kind of relating it to, say, simulation theory, would this be kind of like the code you would be
Exactly.
explaining to?
This, I mean, calculus, arguably, created by Leibniz, before Newton, though I suppose Newtonian calculus is far more useful, but Leibniz invented calculus based on I Ching, invented binary based on I Ching. Code is a child of the I Ching, of this binary breakdown into pictures. You know, how do zeros and ones make pictures? You know, this is one, this is zero, and this is how. We're given these images, and fortunate enough that it actually depicts the thing.
This supposedly far predates the invention of zero, too.
Yes, it does predate zero. It also predates the written language of China. These characters, these trigrams, become the ideograms of Chinese. So, think of a good one. I'm gonna do my best. It's not gonna be good. That is water. But when you look back at older scripts, you find that it's just that. That becomes that. But the origin of a great deal of Chinese characters are from this, or from I Ching, which shows that it's an older system.
Right, kind of relating it back to that I asked earlier. Would we be able to use this kind of like to, say, create a cheat code in a way, in our own reality?
Fantastic point, and that I think is really the question that Philip K. Dick asks. Philip K. Dick is perhaps the most famous user of the I Ching. Leonard Cohen was also a pretty staunch advocate for the I Ching in creative work, but Dick uses it to write. Dick uses this actually to write his most popular book. And he describes that it was a deal made with this text. As Justin had said, Blavatsky indicates these are very good guys. The text is not full of demons, not full of evil, the way that most divination systems are. You know, there's a good reason to be afraid of Ouija boards. There's a good reason to be afraid of geomancy. There's generally a good reason to be afraid of tarot. The I Ching offers what I would say, like Cabala, is the most clean system. And so it made a deal with Dick, and it wasn't a jab, it wasn't a backstab. He uses it to write The Man in the High Castle, and it is, to this day, his best-selling book. It made his name, it made him popular. got him a lot of money. And in the book, the I Ching is utilized. Characters use the I Ching, he uses the I Ching, and what is the story about but an alternate reality? An alternate reality in which the Axis powers win the Second World War. And do you care if I spoil? Should I spoil this?
Go for it.
Okay. Throughout this whole text, you've got this book. There's a book within the book that is the same subject as the book that we're reading. The book in the book is called The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, which is about what if the Allies won the Second World War. And it was written by an author using the I Ching in the book. And finally, after it's a banned book, the Nazis hate it, the Japanese hate it, but the rebellion and the rebels love it. And finally, they reach this author, who is described as the man in the high castle. He hides himself away. And our main character says, "Did you write this using the I Ching?" He says, "No," blah, blah, blah. But finally she breaks him down. He says, "Yes, you must be a really avid user of the I Ching to recognize its language, its tone." She says, "Yes, I use it constantly." And she says, "Have you ever asked why it wrote that book?" And he says, "No, that was part of the deal. I could never ask why it wanted that book written." She says, "Well, can I ask?" And he says, "Sure." So she casts it, and she gets, I believe, I'll have to draw it over here. I might be wrong, but I think I'm right. That, which is 61, which is inner truth, which basically says it's true. In the book about the Allies winning was the actual truth. So they kind of realize we live inside a dream. We're living in a false reality. I don't think that the I Ching would do this in real life. It was telling the truth in the book because that is the reality we live in. But to discern one's own personal path, this is a very ideal text. Just like if one were to flip in Ecclesiastes to see what time it was, it would be pretty impossible for it to lie, because it's only made of truth.
Would there be any other ways to use the I Ching kind of beyond divination?
Yes, absolutely. Artistically, you can use it. You can, just like you do with Cabala, you can correspond it. You can kind of see the character of events. There's a very interesting fellow on Instagram and TikTok, I believe he goes by Fishing in Space. He does facial analysis utilizing hexagrams. I think he, trying to think of how quite it would, it's too complicated, I know. But if you have a serious fork.
How did Philip K. Dick use the I Ching to write the book?
So he would cast, and I think he starts out just by casting it. I guess he's had an idea, he casts it and says, what happens? And he just agrees, he just follows as if that did happen in the book. Then characters in the book will cast the I Ching and get that result, which is basically assumed to be true in the text. So those things follow. So by making it simultaneously a part of his writing and a part of the character's experience, it writes the book. Though I'm sure you can write it without including it.
When you've done readings for me in the past, you've never used this, you've always used tarot. Is there a reason, do you have a personal preference for one over the other, or what do you think one gives you that the other can't?
I'm very lazy. You saw how long it took to throw those coins. It's kind of embarrassing. Something that I've been using at home, I use dice. I use 8-sided dice, 2 of them, to do these very quickly. But there's complexities involved in the coins that aren't even, which truly is not enough. You kind of have to use yarrow stalks, which is an extremely time-consuming process. It can take an hour to get a reading. I'm an accelerationist. I believe in advanced, hyper-technological versions of doing traditional Chinese divination. So dice and coins are just easier, but I can read cards instantly. Like, you can just pull it and have it. That's easier for me. But like when I'm sitting down with somebody at length, not at a party, for example, I read a lot at parties, I could never do this at a party. This is too in-depth. It also requires more, or it tends to, something that I've been working on is just not using the written text, just using the pictures, just using the Chinese characters that go with it, which I'm not going to get into right now. That would be a class in itself.
Which would you say, because I think you're kind of getting to this, or you're right on the edge of this, which one would you say takes more of the intuition of the caster? Like tarot or I Ching, which one, needs more interpretation through intuition?
I think that's absolutely the right point. It's kind of like television versus reading, which is no knock on tarot. Like, I love television. Not really, but I like looking at stuff. Tarot is a visually exciting medium. You look at anybody can look at it and be like, wow, look at those beautiful pictures. And in that is the danger. That is where it becomes a dangerous thing. That's where a picture like death with a skeleton.
It's almost like the art is the phenomenon.
Exactly, the art is the thing. Whereas with the I Ching, it is simultaneously foreign enough to take on greater intuitive significance, at least to Westerners, and it is stripped down. You have to put your reading on it. You can read this book and get nothing. You have to, in my opinion, read these pictures. You have to see the pictures. I'll just give a quick Chinese character. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong here. This is as best I remember it. I might be wrong, but this is middle or inner truth. This is definitely not the way you draw it, but these are the characters that make it up. Middle, inner. This is then a chicken's claw and a child. So think about the way that a bird will cradle its chicks, will cradle its eggs. That is faith or truth. It is the truth of the parental relationship, the faith of a parental relationship, and it's within. This is kind of the picture of an egg as well. You can kind of see the image of an egg with the hollow in the middle. So combining that with that is better than reading the book. You're going to get more intuitive material out of this.
Would there be a way to, say, make a I Ching like coin, like set?
Yes, and it's something that I have thought about doing, though I don't think that it's a good idea to have those answers as easily. I do think that there is something to having a technology, to having an external technology. Like, you could just flip this book and read it. But there's something about throwing coins or yarrow stalks, because it's kind of a mathematical output, that cards just don't do. Cards are very fast, too fast. I don't like it personally.
I think it's similar to the, you call it technology. It's, there's this constant kind of thought error that we do, just in pop culture, I guess, where we love pretending that we know things about quantum mechanics, and people constantly call quantum mechanics a theory. It's not a theory, it's a technology, it's a system. And it's very interesting when you look at them as systems, as technology, instead of some kind of just idea.
Truly they are. They are technological systems. They follow a science and they have reliable output. cards. Something that I think is significant as well about I Ching and tarot is this division. This is a more simplistic division. You know, you have to learn all of astrology and Kabbalah to really get serious about card reading, at least from the English system, which I would say is the most accurate of the systems. Otherwise, you're just doing psychic stuff. This, though, is easy if you can commit it to memory. If you can commit these 8 parts to memory, you're set. You will be able to read any hexagram and grasp the picture. But tarot, you can like understand one card, but not understand its relation to another card at all. This system is really a closed circuit that informs you. Once you get those 8, you're set.
I remember you saying that it would be that the I Ching is cleaner than say tarot. With translating some of the I Ching or some of the Golden Dawn magic, which is based on tarot, into I Ching, how much would that change the say rituals and things of the sort?
I think or at least in the translation that I'm in the process of getting it edited right now. I believe there's a fair chance it'll be out next year, my translation, with Tetragrammaton. I include the Kabbalistic correspondences because I think it doesn't change the Golden Dawn magic, it doesn't change the Thelemic magic. It is a simple addition, a beneficial addition, nor do I think it dirties the I Ching. It is simply a perfect mirror, which you can take or leave. Do we have any TV Land questions or comments? Okay.
I have one, last one, I guess. So, you know, there's a lot of people that say that magic or divination is wild and up to the person, and you can just make your own systems and things like that. Why are these old systems important? Why is this lineage? Why is understanding where these kings come from and how they relate to these other systems? Why is it important for us to know? Why can't we just go do magic and like whip up some sigils in our own systems?
I think it's the same argument as Blavatsky's, which is that the comparison is what reveals truth. It is through comparative study that we glean the reality of things. The similarity between I Ching and Cabala aids both, it helps both. Something Blavatsky talks about, and one of the kind of main derisions against Cabala is that, oh, it was invented in Portugal. It was invented in Portugal in the 1500s. Yeah. This is, you know, made up nonsense, which it's not, undoubtedly. This shows that. The mirror of I Ching, which is undoubtedly, absolutely super ancient, its mirror image in Kabbalah, in the basics of Kabbalah. You know, obviously, there's a whole lot of Kabbalah that is new, that is kind of nonsense. But the basics are here, and the basics do work. So we can assume fairly safely that the origins of Kabbalah are similar to I Ching. Also, that the problem of lineage is so just non-existent in China. This has been used forever and is still something I was just reading. You've all heard of DeepSeek? The #1 usage of DeepSeek in China is I Ching. Everybody uses it to do I Ching readings. Because there are far more complexity that's possible with I Ching reading. Like there's numerology, there's a Confucian reading, there's a numerological reading, there are Taoist reading. You can do all these different styles of I Ching reading, but again, these are the base elements that we care about, that we need to grasp.
Could this be dangerous?
Could it be dangerous? I think if you fall for the numbers, that's the most dangerous thing. And I think we did have a question.
It kind of went away. Like the thing cut off. I can't really properly read the chat.
Not listening to it?
No. Sometimes you get an answer that you're meant to ignore. I think in tarot a lot of times it'll tell you don't do that to make you want to do it.
Sure.
You know, the divinatory systems are good psychologists.
Let me see if I can find the questions.
Question from the chat. Why is the tree of life necessary at all?
That's a great question. Why is the tree of life necessary at all? It provides a structure to the fall of matter. So I think nobody would disagree that the elemental magic that's going on is vital. Everybody loves the cross. Everybody loves, I guess some people love the swastika, which is the same thing. So here's a way to look at it. This is kind of the basic fall of matter, is this fourfold system, which is also present in the tree, I just didn't depict it. This is the tetragrammaton, Yod, He, Vav, He. The tenfold is the image of man. When God in Genesis says, you know, man is made in my image, part of that is our inherent numerology. This is my idea. If you do numerology, just never trust any number that's over 10. Any number you can't make with your hands should be distrusted. So the Kabbalah provides us with a tenfold instead of a fourfold fall of matter. This kind of fall, this lightning zigzag down from heaven to earth, is the best approximation that we have for grasping these things. It provides the structure of tarot. It provides the paths and spheres. I mean, it's the origin of playing cards, the reason we need the Tree of Life is because it is a useful way of grasping what the numbers mean. That's basically it.
Another question that I'm going to kind of rephrase for you, is there an I Ching, is there a Clifothic equivalent in the I Ching?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so. I wouldn't, like, tarot is not Clifothic. There is no Clifothic tarot. No. But that's a good question.
Would it be dangerous to ask the ancient for advice? Say, if I ask a question saying, should I blank?
No, I would say it's better than most other systems. It's going to help you far more. But it will probably also tell you if it doesn't want you to ask for that.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be direct.
If it is this potent, is this a good explanation for what China is catching up to the US and doing so well geopolitically?
This is actually, I've actually had this idea for a while that the only way that China would wholly catch up would be the total reincorporation of Taoist mysticism. That deep-seek thing does kind of freak me out because to me it does indicate that they will, because the lean entirely toward the Confucian was a mistake. What America has is basically like tarot, is like creative phantasmagoria and creative ability, which was lacking in China for a second. This, though, is that. That is that part of them that is that. And it becoming reincorporated, something I also learned a few years ago while I was at a Jung Institute, is that the biggest fans of Carl Jung are in China and come and visit Jung Institutes around the country to study Jung. They are trying to find ways of reincorporating past mystic traditions to advance the culture. So absolutely, the reincorporation of the I Ching will lead to complete, total Chinese domination.
Did Mao and the Chinese communists hate the I Ching because it was ancient Confucian, yada yada?
Yes, they killed most of the traditional practitioners, and there's a good translation in English called The Complete I Ching by Alfred Wong, and he described the death of his master, and the master was like, you have to go to America and translate this, which could be, capitalist propaganda, but
So that's why they had such a bad country underground.
yes, the destruction of the mystic traditions is a huge loss for them.
And as we've seen too in history, I think something too, like not just the destruction of the mystic tradition, but if you can corrupt those mystic traditions in an entire society, like the Nazis did sometimes with a lot of symbols. I mean, not just swastika, the SS, the Black Sun, all these things that like entire cultures for thousands of years have seen as nothing but positive. And like if you're able to corrupt that stuff, then you see what the power of that like negative sigil can be.
Absolutely. The perfect way to see that would be like if by some outrageous turn of events, South Korea, the flag of South Korea became like a Nazi flag, and this was thrown out as some kind of evil
Absolutely.
system that was backing it, which is essentially what did happen to runes.
Oh, totally.
What
The
I would
American
say though,
prison system is ruined for runes.
though I would say, what is it, Guido von List is his name?
No.
Guido von List, who like kind of reinvents runes. Like, part of what's so good about this is that it is really old. It's undeniably old. Runes did need to be redone and rediscovered. There was more room for alteration. The translation, this is also part of my advice for grasping I Ching, is just don't read the book, just pictures and names. These are like, that is thousands of years older than this. This is thousands and thousands of years older than this. There are lines that describe each part. Those are pretty new, comparatively. Like, some think it was written by Confucius. So it can be useful, but it's not what I Ching is. I Ching is this.
Would this be kind of like the touch grass technology for us, since we've gone to a technology that is almost foreign to us?
Definitely. I mean, this is definitely closer to touching grass than tarot. Coins, reality, and ultimately, when you do the traditional method, you are literally touching grass. You're touching stalks of plants to gain this reading. Yes.
I guess more from a more technical question, because when we read the broken lines, heads is basically which one, and tell us what?
Heads, if we read, okay. Heads is masculine, which is yang. Broken is feminine, which is yin. You can read it very vulgarly. This is a phallus. This is yonic. It's a hole and a stick. It can be read that vulgarly. All right, I think we've got an hour. I think we got. It's a very complicated topic, which I don't know if I fully grasped how complicated it was to explain. I hope I did an okay job. Did you all come away getting a more complete picture of what this is about?
I don't know everybody else, but I enjoyed it as a follow-up for sure.
I think I bit off a bit more than I can chew. I think this was a bit too large of a notion. We could just spend the whole time looking at these three, looking just at the Tao, the yin-yang, and yang and yin as they manifest, before we even get into these elements and how they interact.
Oh, right, yeah.
You know, like there's so much, because this is really what most Chinese mystics are dealing with, is just how are these flowing in nature? How are these flowing in the body? How are these flowing throughout the world? And these are simply good indications of that.
Sorry, you mentioned Jung. Did you ever touch on I Ching?
Yes, Jung actually was friends with what I would say is probably the best known and the best translator that we've had yet, Wilhelm, Richard Wilhelm. And he wrote, in the style of Philip K. Dick, he wrote the introduction to his translation of the I Ching. And he didn't know what to do, so he asked the I Ching, what do you think of this translation? And it gave an answer, and he just wrote about that. Yes, Jung is definitely a good way to get into it. I don't know, do you want me to keep talking?
Well, do you think, so I keep thinking of the Red Book, because like, in the Red Book, he's always talking to the system. He's always like talking to it like it's talking back, and it just reminds me of this.
I mean, it's definitely, you don't read that many people using tarot to write books. Sometimes I think it's been used to make movies, though I can't recall the name of them. But this is like undoubtedly one of the most verbal and creative, and specifically it's that translation that is spoken the most to Jung, to Leonard Cohen, to Philip K. Dick. All used the Wilhelm Baines translation. That's the most common one that you can get anywhere. A lot of the new ones are also garbage, not worth getting. But mine is going to be very much worth getting. It's extremely simple.
And you just answered another reason why lineage is so important, because so much of this stuff is like pop garbage nowadays. Like, I mean, go into any, metaphysical bookstore, and most of the stuff is just, I mean, it's dipping its toes in the shadow end, but that's about it. And then it's just whatever they want to do from there. So I think that's a big reason lineage is important because it shows someone you respect and you studied has done this and proven results. So it's a verification. It's the way science works as well.
I think that's a great point because you can tell when it's bullshit because, number one, they are not translating it. They are reading Wilhelm and trying to reinterpret what he wrote. I will say, now we're just talking about mine. I translated the I Ching character by character painstakingly for the sake of gleaning greater secrets from this text. And I think it's led to a far greater, I mean, this correspondence thing is like a late stage to my reading of I Ching, which I've been doing since high school. And it had some of my favorite results in high school. It was like something that was really radical. I always like tarot with other, this is what I'll end on. I will always read tarot cards for other people. When I have a serious problem, when I'm seeking serious divination, I will always use the I Ching for myself. Any serious question, I'm asking the I Ching before I'm asking the tarot. Or if I am asking the tarot, I'm like, please don't lie to me, Hermes, Mercury, Thoth. Like, will you talk to me? Will you just tell the truth? And sometimes they're still gonna lie. This is going to tell you the truth like 99% of the time. I would say that's it.
I guess like a further reading, how could, say, I start reading about the I Ching?
Just get the Wilhelm I Ching. That's it. I do, the Crowley I Ching is also not really a translation. But it's a fun reinterpretation. And of course, his correspondence to Cabala is actually extremely useful. But it's a very difficult book. I wouldn't recommend it to start with, and it's also out of print. But the Beastly Book of Changes is amusing. But the Wilhelm I Ching is what to start with.
That's how you can always count on Crowley. If nothing else, it would be amusing.
It is very amusing. He just makes it rhyme. It's like fun rhymes and stuff. How about I finish off, or I guess my phone is in use. I was going to say I'll read, we'll just go in the back. I want to read you all an excerpt from my I Ching. But thank you all for coming. Thank you, TV Land. Thank you, MemeAnalysis people. I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you all, my friends, for coming. And thank you to the ULT. Thank you to Theosophy. I'm so grateful to Justin. I'm so grateful to Justin. And more so, I'm so grateful to the ULT for still existing after all this time. We are doing something that has been over a century of tradition. Aldous Huxley spoke here. Many, many great thinkers spoke right on this stage. And I'm very happy to be part of what I hope is a great and fantastic renaissance to the United Lodge of Theosophists.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry that it was a cut.
Cutting it.